A lot of groups here today, and this is such important legislation that the Attorney General has asked if one from each group could please join us up front here. We would be honored to have you up here. If anyone wants to come up here and represent their group, come on up here. We're all in this together.
Hey Jennifer, good to see you. All right. Is that okay? Yes. Hey, absolutely.
Okay. Yes. We want to thank each and every one of you. We know that you've traveled very far, some of you, so we really appreciate you being here for this announcement today. You know, 1,404 Kentuckians died in 2016 of a drug overdose. Drug abuse across the Commonwealth is at a record high, despite the efforts of the General Assembly and law enforcement to provide the tools that are needed to combat this scourge upon our Commonwealth. Today, we are announcing that we will put the power of the state's top law enforcement official, along with a bipartisan group of leaders, to oversee the spending of funds secured by the Attorney General that will be used for prevention, treatment, and the recovery of addiction. Kentucky's war on drugs is a top priority for the General Assembly. Transcending party lines, we are all in this together. House Bill 219 creates a committee whose purpose is to direct funds to agencies needing the resources to combat our drug epidemic. This committee will be a bipartisan appointed group to administer the funds that have been received as a result of the lawsuits won or settled by our Attorney General. This is a tremendous opportunity to make inroads in the war against drug abuse and addiction, and most importantly, the prevention. Kentucky's hospitals, medical providers, first responders, and most of all, the families are bowing under the weight of this drug abuse. I am proud to file this legislation that will provide additional resources to fight drug abuse and addiction. I'm also grateful for all of my co-sponsors. We have 30 as of right now. And it's with a great honor to introduce Attorney General Andy Beshear.
You don't need it. Good morning. I'd be remiss this morning if I didn't start by at least acknowledging the tragedy of yesterday's school shooting in Marshall County. Thus far, that act of pure evil has taken the lives of 2 young Kentuckians. I cannot begin to understand the pain that their families feel. When that news came out yesterday, my wife Brittany and my 2 kids were at school. I want you to know that my office has reached out to local prosecutors, law enforcement, victims advocates, and we're offering every single bit of help that we can. But let's just take one moment of silence, thought, prayer if you're willing, and send every positive thought and help we can to those families. Thank you. Today and every day in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, we lose on average 4 Kentuckians to a fatal overdose. That's 4 Kentuckians, each of whom has family and friends, each of whom will be missed every single day after they're gone. All of us have been touched. I know that. I know I look out on a filled rotunda and all of us have lost that friend, family member, or neighbor. Brittany and I have lost a neighbor. It makes you think. It makes you think about your children. You know, the last 24 hours, I've thought a lot. We've thought a lot about our children, about the time we get to spend with them, about the time we spend away from them, like we are today or like we do in our jobs. but I am convinced more than ever that it is worth it. Our children deserve a better world than they are growing up in, and we're here today to try to build that better world. And I have faith that that is possible. You know, I love that line in John chapter 1 that says, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has never put it out." But you know, there's a line about 11 chapters later that says, "Believe in the light, that you may become the sons of light." Well, today in this rotunda, there are a lot of sons and daughters of light. People who believe in a better world and work every day to make it a reality. You stare into the abyss, the hopelessness that can be addiction, and you add your light. You add your hope. You work every day knowing every inch of ground you make up may be the difference between someone's life and death. And boy, do we need your tenacity. And we appreciate you. This drug epidemic is the single greatest threat that this Commonwealth faces. It's the single greatest threat to the lives of our family. It is stealing children from parents, and as you know, parents from children. Again, we lose 4 people every day. You want to talk about urgency? Every day we don't take action, 4 of our friends and family members and neighbors die. We do not have time. We cannot be slow. We must act quickly and decisively. The damage and trauma caused by these overdoses, you all know, doesn't just impact that individual. It scars families, it scars communities. There is not one victim per overdose, but many victims. But within this horrendous disease, this debilitating epidemic, there is an opportunity, a chance to come together and to do the right thing, to put the lives of our people first. Doing the right thing is using settlement monies from pharmaceutical manufacturers and distributors to fight this epidemic. We've had a little bit of justice in this area, but we need a whole lot more. Since 2014, Attorney General pharma lawsuits have brought in over $42 million for expanded and enhanced treatment, early intervention and prevention efforts, and rocket docket programs so that we can get those who need to be in treatment and not in the criminal justice system there as quickly as we can. Some of you here today, your organizations can attest to the amazing work that this little bit of seed money can provide, how much more you can do with a little bit of help on the way. Some of the things that you've accomplished, that I think we've accomplished together: more healthy mothers and healthy babies that are born, more women getting treatment and services to get them back into their communities and families, more access to adolescent in-home services, access to traditional housing for both men and women, enhanced and expanded residential programs for our youth, and better early detection and screening in our schools. Now, I've heard some people suggest that Big Pharma should not be held accountable, that they didn't write any of these prescriptions and they didn't fill any of these prescriptions, and that they're just being blamed for this epidemic. Well, let me tell you folks, these multinational corporations made billions of dollars from products that devastated your community. And as we sit here today, unless we've dragged them into court and made them look at you and explain their actions, they haven't put one real dollar into helping our communities climb out and deal with this addiction. They haven't spent one real dollar helping that person that you know who needs help get better. They should be blamed, and they should be held accountable. And I'll tell you, as long as I'm your Attorney General, no one is going to stop me from filing these suits and dragging these manufacturers and distributors into a Kentucky court where you can get justice. Because they knew exactly what they were doing. Last November, I filed a lawsuit against Endo Pharmaceuticals. Endo manufactured a drug called Opana ER, and Some who are here in recovery know that Opana is so scary, many people, even in the height of addiction, won't necessarily go there. Last year, more than 190 Kentuckians died of an overdose caused by Opana ER. Endo knew that this drug was too addictive. It knew it was too dangerous, that it should only be used for long-term pain, debilitating pain. That left them with a small market share where they weren't going to make enough money. So they decided to increase their sales by advertising it and persuading the doctors that it was safe for long-term use for common pain like back problems, arthritis, or even headaches. After helping to create that market, which led to the widespread use and diversion of Opana ER, they continued to sell it and to profit. When it was proven to them, though they already knew how dangerous it was, did they stop? Not until we made them. They continued to put their profits over people's lives. It was not safe. It was readily injectable, and it has not only led to fatal overdoses and addiction, but widespread HIV and hepatitis C throughout many of your regions. Just last Monday, I filed a lawsuit against McKesson Pharmaceuticals. This lawsuit alleges that McKesson had a 32.7, almost a third market share of every single pill that went to your communities from January 1st, 2010 to the end of 2016. Their practices hit our rural eastern Kentucky counties harder than most. During that time frame, McKesson distributed over 18 million doses of oxycodone and generic hydrocodone, just those two, in Floyd County alone. 18 million hydrocodone and generic oxycodone to one county. And that county's population, just 38,638 men, women, and children. That means McKesson distributed 477 opioids to every man, woman, and child in Floyd County, and that's just a third of the market. It's no wonder that that county is dealing with massive levels of addiction. But it's not just in Floyd County, it's in all your counties. In Perry County, 422 doses per man, woman, and child. Clay County, 395. Owsley County, 386. And Bell County, 351. I don't know about you, but I think those numbers are glaringly obvious. No responsible company. I got a little fired up. No responsible company would have seen those numbers, would have seen that going through and think all is well. While they made money, you paid the price. From 2012 to 2015, we lost 4,400 friends, neighbors, and children due to overdose deaths. But House Bill 219 should give us hope. What does it do? It ensures that this money, and it is blood money. It is money from corporations that profited at the expense of your families and that fueled this epidemic, actually goes to addressing the epidemic. It means that all these dollars we recover after costs can only be spent for one thing, and that's to address our drug epidemic. Because folks, as you know, there's a number of financial crises happening here in Frankfort, and there always are. But this money, this blood money, should go to helping our families claw out of addiction. And at the same time, it solves a major problem, and that's speed. As you all know, we lose people every day. And if we bring in funds, we can't wait months. We can't wait years to get them to the folks that need them. Especially our providers here today know that you have long wait lists, and those are real people that need help. So what this bill does is it creates a committee that can take these funds as they come in and get them out as quickly as possible. I want to give you one example of why that's so important. Your legislature will leave here in April. If we brought in a large settlement in May, it may have to wait 2 years to get to where it needs to go. 2 years with at least 4 people dying every day. This bill gets a little bit of justice, not just making sure that that money goes to the right place, but it gets it to the right place as quickly as possible, because that next person that's on that waiting list could be you, could be your friend, could be any of our children. You know, that 47th Psalm says, "Depart from evil and do good, and you'll abide in him, for the Lord loves justice." House Bill 219, plus these lawsuits that we're filing, seeks a little bit of that justice. And we all ought to be on board. You know, I know as we look out here in the rotunda, we have Democrats, we have Republicans, none of you care. And none of you should, because drugs don't care. As you know, drugs will kill you whether you're a Democrat or Republican, an independent, or not even registered. They don't care. And we have to rise above partisanship and rancor and ego and make sure that we all are willing to do the right thing. And this bill, 219, is the right thing. So I need your help. Each of you are in communities where your lawmakers may or may not already be a sponsor. But I need you to demand it from them, that it doesn't matter where this bill is coming from. It doesn't matter who's supporting it or even who's announcing it. It's the right thing to do, and it's absolutely critical to the lives of their constituents. In the end, this drug epidemic is, in many ways, our be-all, end-all. It is the challenge that's going to determine whether we as a state and we as a people, whether any individual community can move forward or whether we're falling back. So let's take this opportunity. Let's show this state and our country our values, that we are not only going to hold these companies responsible, but we are going to use these recoveries to help our fellow man. Thank you all very much. I now want to introduce a champion in this area that's fought day in and day out, and like you, has experienced loss, Representative Joni Jenkins.
Good morning. Thank you all so much for being here. It is an honor to stand here with our Attorney General and with Representative Dennis King, who is the major co-sponsor of this wonderful piece of legislation. And I stand before you not only as a state representative that has looked at budgets and looks at the statistics and knows what a tremendous issue this is and what a tremendous challenge this is for our state, but I stand before you as one of you. May 28th, 2013, I joined the club nobody wants to be a member of, and my family experienced tremendous loss when we lost my nephew, Wes. We thought our Wes was unique in many ways. He was a star baseball player, a great kid, but what was not unique about him in our state is he had the disease of addiction. And the journey that we took that year before his death was like none other. The frustrations of finding suitable treatment, the fear of getting that phone call. I know many of you have walked that. And for very much of that year, our family told nobody but the closest people, because there's such a stigma among this issue. And as the Attorney General says, we have to shine light into this darkness. We have to make it aware that all of our neighbors are dealing with this, and that we shouldn't be ashamed of having this disease or having a loved one who has this disease, because reaching out for treatment's really, really difficult. Reaching out for help is really, really difficult if it's a secret. So thank you for the work you do every day. In 2015, our family decided it was time to break the silence. We were working on a bill in that session to address this epidemic, and we decided to be very, very public about our loss. And I'm really glad we did that because so many people have reached out to me looking for answers, looking for hope. And the one question that I get very often from folks is there hope? Should we just give up? We've been through treatment, it's been a roller coaster, our loved one gets help, they go through detox, they get clean, and you know what, they relapse. Is this ever going to end in a good way? And while our story didn't end in such a good way, and many don't, there is hope. And there's hope when we provide the necessary tools, the appropriate treatment for folks that are battling this disease, and we give help and hope to families who want only the best for their loved one. Hardly a week goes by that I'm not contacted by a family. And here's what I share with them. Here are the truths that I have learned in this journey. Prevention works, but we have to fund it. We have to fund evidence-based prevention, and we have to start early. And there are some folks that say, oh, you can't talk to elementary school kids about this. You know what? You have to. Prevention works. Treatment works. But no one treatment plan is going to work for everyone. We need an array of different plans: residential, intensive outpatient, medically assisted therapies. And we're learning new things every day. So the ability to fund things quickly is so important. That's why this bill is so important. Waiting lists for treatment don't work. How many families out there had a loved one ready to go to treatment and were told, well, in 6 weeks we can get you in? Let me tell you, the game can change completely in 6 days, much less 6 weeks. And the ability to pay for treatment should not be a barrier. Very, very worried about the state of health care in this nation and in Kentucky. We have, in the last few years, through the Affordable Care Act and expanded Medicaid, built up our infrastructure. And I worry that that could go away really, really quickly. And recovery happens in the community. Sobriety in a controlled environment sometimes is not sustained in community, so having community treatment is so, so important. Drug court works. We need to have law enforcement and our court system as partners in this battle. We can't incarcerate our way out of this epidemic, but for some folks, that accountability that drug court provides can be a really important role in recovery. I'm so proud to sponsor this measure and to stand with our Attorney General, and I hope that by establishing a permanent dedicated fund, no one has to wait to start treatment, and we are able to provide that much-needed evidence-based preventative programs to our very youngest citizens. Thank you so much. Next to speak to you is Rick Worth from the Children's Home of Northern Kentucky.
Good morning, everyone. I am Rick Worth. I'm Chief Executive Officer at Children's Home of Northern Kentucky. We sit high on a hill in Northern Kentucky in one of the most beautiful places I think I've ever seen. We sit on a hill overlooking the Ohio River, and we look down on Cincinnati high from our hilltop. And out on our front lawn, there's an expansive place where people often come to sit and enjoy the view. There's a man who's been sitting out on the front lawn for the last several months. Off and on he comes because he's lost his teenage son to this opioid crisis. And he comes and he mourns on our property, and he has become one of our biggest warriors and companions in this fight. One of the things that we know as we gather here this morning is that addiction is not a new topic. Our Children's Home was founded in the 1800s. I can go to Children's Home of Northern Kentucky and I pull these large leather books out, and I can see why children came to our orphanage in 1882, and many times I see this code word from the 1800s, and it says intemperate parent, an addicted parent. That was then. But something is different. Now it's the children, it's the youth who are addicted. And it's not alcohol. Last night, a few hours ago actually, I sat in our outpatient services building, and the waiting room was full of Kentucky parents and Kentucky adolescents and families, and they were waiting for behavioral health IOP at our children's home. And I sat in on that intensive outpatient group, and I saw a room filled of Northern Kentucky high school kids. One young lady in that group last night at Children's Home of Northern Kentucky was asked, when did you first start using? And she couldn't remember because drug use has been such a rampant part of her family that she could not remember a time when she wasn't using. A young man was in the same group next to her and talked about his father being incarcerated because of a drug issue. And he realizes that he's on a trajectory frighteningly similar to that of his dad. These dollars that the Attorney General is discussing this morning, they are not simply about spreadsheets on some Excel spreadsheet. They are about Kentuckians and their very lives that are at stake here. Children's Home of Northern Kentucky has been a proud recipient of these funds arising from pharmaceutical settlements. And what those funds have enabled us to do is to get very badly needed services to the front lines as quickly as possible. I appreciate the comments that Representative Jenkins made about her nephew. My nephew just got out of a federal prison because of a heroin addiction. And the addiction was so strong, he robbed a local Kroger. This is a kid who is as a powder puff as powder puffs come. This is a kid who started off with a high school football injury, who got too many opioids prescribed, and my brother and my family were shocked by how fast the trajectory went from those prescriptions to robbing a Kroger and being in a federal prison in Texas. I take this personally. This is not just a business matter for me, even though I'm a CEO of a children's home. That trajectory was quick. It was lightning fast. My family was unprepared. And so in the 1800s, when there were orphans that needed to be taken care of, we rose to the occasion. Northern Kentucky alone had 3 orphanages almost next door to each other. We had multiple orphan societies. We are smart. We know how to address community needs. What these funds from the Attorney General's office have helped us to do is to be smart, to do what we always do, and that is to address needs of the community. What they have done for us is to keep up with the lightning pace of addiction. We can do this, and I'm proud to partner with General Beshear and with these representatives and all of you today in making good things happen for Kentuckians.
Sure. And now we're going to hear from Renee McCoy from Hope in the Mountains.
It is an honor and a privilege here on many sides of the coin to be here. We are a recipient of the monies from Purdue Pharma. Had it not been for Purdue Pharma, we would have been closed. We were a very small facility, give awesome care, but it takes money. So we used part of the funds to position ourselves to be able to bill insurance because of the Affordable Care Act. Had to do some physical plant changes, so on. We thought that was going to be the answer to everything, only to find out that is only the tip of the iceberg. You who work in the field, you who have been part of the field, a week to 30 days does very little. Sometimes when you align with insurance, you have to say, that's it, that's all, we can't do anymore. But because we have another facility, we're able to say, oh, your insurance won't pay? Come on. Oh, your insurance won't pay? We'll still keep you. Oh, you need to stay 90 days, you need to stay 6 months? We will keep you because of this money. That's the only way we could do it. We can't turn people away, well, women away. Because of this money to date, we have been able to serve 111 women who would not have been able to have been served any other way. It is a ministry and it is our calling, and the employees are the same way. I just push a broom sometimes. You know, like the Attorney General said, addiction did not stop on anybody's door and say, what party are you from? Because it don't care. Well, the one thing we can learn from addiction is how to not discriminate. Because it doesn't care what the color of your skin is. It doesn't care what religion you are. It doesn't care if you're male, female, whatever, sexual preference. When it comes to your door, it's got you. And we all need to join together to save one life, if that's all it takes. Thank you so much.
And finally, we're going to hear from a true warrior that I've had the honor of knowing and working beside now for a little over 4 years, and that's Kimberly Wright from Northern Kentucky Hates Heroin.
First, today I want to thank Attorney General Beshear for giving families and advocates a voice for this pandemic. I also want to thank my local representative, Dennis Keene, for bringing House Bill 219 forward. I want to thank Joni Jenkins. I see Representative Cantrell, Representative Atkins, and some others in the room. Thank you for standing with us today. The current pandemic has no political, social, or economical boundaries. It has caused countless deaths throughout the state of Kentucky and the country as Big Pharma made billions of dollars. This is a life-saving issue, and holding those accountable for the deaths of our loved ones and those still struggling. Big Pharma should have to pay for and be held responsible for pouring opiates into our state and causing this pandemic, and it is a pandemic, that is taking 177 lives every day and 4 Kentucky lives every day and counting, including my sister and my nephew. Treatment and prevention could greatly reduce the number of needless deaths to a treatable illness, the piece that is always sorely lacking in addressing this pandemic. It's the piece that otherwise would be in the forefront of any other pandemic. Big Pharma knowingly poured millions of pills into our communities that have caused many deaths and financial burdens to the state and its citizens and families. Every year, NKY Hates Heroin has a 5K memorial race. I volunteer and stand at that memorial wall and take photos from families and listen to their stories of pain and grief. The wall sadly grows every year with photos of our beautiful children. These lawsuits can provide some justice for these families and provide much-needed treatment, prevention, and other funding for our communities who are in desperate need of it as I speak. I support all efforts and lawsuits along with all of my fellow advocates across the state, who are a lot of them standing in this room. We all work together throughout this state to help our families and our communities. We all want to hold big pharma companies responsible, and I hope all of our elected officials will do the same. Thank you.
I want to thank everyone who's shown up today, our representatives that are already signed up as co-sponsors, and everyone that is both working to defeat addiction and those of you that are working every day to defeat your own addiction. And let me briefly say to you all that on behalf of the Commonwealth and in this rotunda, we're really proud of you. And it doesn't matter if you're in treatment for the first time or the 10th time. If you're trying, you are doing the right thing. And if anybody tries to judge you, know that it says more about them and nothing about you. So given we're in Frankfurt, I feel like we need to recognize that working in Frankfurt can be frustrating. It can be difficult, but it is nowhere near as difficult as battling addiction. And so while once we break here, I want everybody to spend some time talking to each other. I want you to take that same strength, that same tenacity that makes you sons and daughters of light, that same will that you use to attack and ultimately defeat addiction every single day, and I want you to travel this Capitol and talk to your state representatives or anyone else that will listen. I want you to tell them how important it is to you and to your community. And if you use that same strength, I believe we can knock down any and every obstacle that's standing in this bill's way and every obstacle that's standing in our way to address addiction. Thank you all very much. We'll take questions individually.